President Trump announcing the government has taken a 10% stake in Intel. Shares of the chipmaker have soared nearly 30% since the start of the month. Joining us right now is Marc Caputo. He's Axios' senior political reporter. We've all been trying to make sense of this, trying to understand if there's a bigger implication or if you think that we should think about this more in a one-off-ish way. What do you say?
I would think you would think about it sort of like AIG, which was bailed out in the TARP program in 2008 under President Bush. There was kind of a government stake there. It was a $182 billion package, and taxpayers realized a return. That's how the Trump White House is framing this matter currently. So they're just sort of saying, no big deal. But what is interesting about the Trump administration doing this is just how much political capital Donald Trump has spent railing against the ills of socialism. And then the United States is coming in and buying an equity stake, essentially, of this historic tech company, which has had real troubles as of late.
So I think the larger question that a lot of senior business leaders across our country and maybe internationally are thinking, OK, is it possible that this government is going to try to take by force, effectively, stakes in other companies? The United States government offers all sorts of incentives, tax incentives, warrants, all sorts of things in all sorts of different ways, but historically has not taken equity as part of them, except in the sort of, depths of the financial crisis.
That's true. There's one school of thought that our current battle with China over microchips is the new battle that's not actually going to be fought with bullets and missiles. So whether they can declare that a full emergency, I doubt it. However, in the case of Intel, it's just been a struggling company, and the government and Trump had decided that this would be the best way to go about it. The larger picture for the Trump White House is the importance of NVIDIA in the AI microchip wars with Huawei. Over the weekend, I think, or just yesterday, the Wall Street Journal had reported that the government of China had said that the NVIDIA chip, the H20 chip, won't be purchased there anymore, won't be allowed to be sold in China, even though China had wanted it at one point. They cited security concerns. Huawei, obviously, is just sort of a branch of the Chinese government because the way the Communist Party runs its companies there. So the United States' view is that the real chip maker to sort of pay attention to, and the chip maker that they're not going to bother with taking over, is NVIDIA. That it's essentially NVIDIA versus Huawei. And so NVIDIA is sort of a proxy for the United States to say that we don't want them to lose this chip war with Huawei, which is another way of saying we don't want the United States or the West to lose the AI chip war with China.
Well, I hear you, Mark. My question is whether you think that, that they're going to go to other either chip makers or other people in the AI business or in the software business that effectively are going to be subsidized by the U.S. government, right? You could even describe it as an indirect subsidy, if you will, at some point and say, you know what, we've helped you, and now you need to help us.
It's certainly possible. I would say in the past it was highly unlikely, but Donald Trump is a very different president, and the Intel arrangement's a great example of that. The other example is TikTok, which is really a sort of a messy situation, also, again, a Chinese company. The United States Congress and the president at the time, Joe Biden, passed and signed a law to ban TikTok. And Trump has just essentially avoided that and has called for having the United States have essentially an equity share in that. Obviously, it's a slightly different company, but he's shown less concern about government involvement in these arrangements. So I can't say no. And that comes despite a lot of sort of classic conservatives who are saying, well, we need to hit the brakes here, because this is not a typical way that the U.S. government acts, but here we are.
Mark, do we know anything about what the long-term fundamental powers this 10% stockholder will have? Are they just a minority shareholder, or are there extra powers? Because as we're seeing with the snapshot of what's happening to the wind industry, the wind farm industry right now, everything can change after the next election, and you might have a government with a very different mindset towards what they want from this company or towards corporate control generally. What is Intel signing away here?
Very good question. I was told it was just a 10% share, that it's a minority non-voting investment where the United States government will receive a return on its investment if the company does well. That having been said, it's obviously sort of uncharted waters. We haven't seen the fine print. And they're casting it in such a way of like, well, if you were to give someone a loan for something, you'd want to be paid back. So this is a way that it could be paid back. And maybe in the future, if Intel makes a whole bunch more money, they could buy the United States government out. Again, we need to see the details, and we haven't seen them yet.
Mark, the other piece of this is they talk about these exceptions. With a couple of exceptions, they'll have no governance. Do you have any idea what those exceptions even are?
I do not. And that is allegedly forthcoming. So, again, we're going to see. We're sort of the blind men describing the Intel elephant at the moment.
And then the bigger question, or I don't know if it's a bigger question, the CEO of Intel goes in there clearly under fire. This is according to the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, FT, and I believe some of your own reporting. Goes in there, thinks he, by the way, might lose his job. The president says, I like you. I'm not worried about the national security stuff. And by the way, I'd like to take an equity stake because we still have these grants that are outstanding. We haven't actually sent you the check yet. If you want that cash, and I know you're sort of, in for a pound, in for a dollar already, you're going to have to give us something. Do you have any more color on how that came about? And the board and shareholders seem to be happy about this. But I'm assuming that they're happy about it to the extent that they now know the government is backing them effectively.
Right. I mean, what you reported there is my understanding. I think the important thing to remember about sort of the administration's focus is its focus on very sort of big specific things, or the president is. Obviously, there's various peace deals and tariff deals across the United States, or better said, across the globe. And microchips and AI are of increasing importance to them. So you not only have that anecdote, when the head of NVIDIA had met with Donald Trump in a prolonged series of discussions. One of the reasons it sort of came out very happy is NVIDIA's president Jensen Huang had written or drawn an actual map or a flow chart, a picture of the way in which the microchip process happens. And Donald Trump liked it so much, he was showing other people how this was. So he's actively taking meetings with CEOs and sort of bargaining on them one-on-one. And you have this very Trumpian or Trump administration style of the way everything's being dealt with, which is the Commerce Secretary has his say and sort of puts deals and discussions together. But ultimately, it always funnels up to Donald Trump, and he sometimes decides things on the fly. And this 10% equity stake, or whatever we're calling it, in Intel is a great example of that as well.